Welcome to Nothing But Bet. This is Action Network's new NBA betting show. I'm your host, Maria Marino, and in a minute, I'll be joined by the crew. Matt Moore, Chris Raybon, Sean Little, and Stephen Keech will preview and give picks for all of today's games. We'll also build a same game parlay as we go. But first, as round one gets going, here are the series prices. Magic plus 168 to upset the Cavaliers. The Suns in the 6th seed are favored over the Timberwolves in the 3 seed. 76ers opened as the favorite to win the series over the Knicks, but that's now flipped with New York slightly favored, and the Lakers are big underdogs at plus 310 to the reigning champs. Let's get into the betting lab with Matt Moore and Chris Raybon. Playoffs are here. Oh, yeah. So everything tips off at 1 Eastern. The first game is Cleveland, favored by 4.5 at home against the Magic. Raybon, why don't you give us your favorite pick for that game?
So it's the playoffs, which means we can resume taking disgusting Eastern Conference first half unders. And that's what I'm doing in this one. I'm going under 106.5. On the first half. Now, we know this is a matchup of two teams that are top 7 on defense. We know that Orlando is top 5 in first half points allowed, and Cleveland was 8th. You know, both of these teams aren't great scoring in the first half either, but you also have a matchup with two teams that are bottom 10 in pace, pretty slow pace. And then you take into account that this is going to be, now we have a playoff atmosphere. These teams have spent the last week preparing for each other, digging into each other's schemes. And the last 3 matchups between these two teams, Maria, the pace, 91.5 or below. Now, for some context, the lowest pace in the league during the regular season was 95.2 for a team. So these teams have been playing at a snail's pace already. I expect that to go down even more in the playoffs. And then you look at Cleveland under Bickerstaff, their postseason first half unders 6-1. They've been covering by over 10 points a game in those spots, averaging under 100 points in those spots. And per Action Labs data, round 1, game 1, first half unders between 98 and 116, 55 and 25, 69%. Nice over the past 2 decades.
Wow. Okay. So we're starting off with a disgusting game. Got it. Matt, do you have anything a little more exciting to bet on? I'm just playing.
I think under first halves are thrilling, Maria. Doing my guy there. I'll take Cavs minus 4.5. I'm not as concerned as Raybon is on taking the Cavs out right here. The slower pace per Chris, it helps Orlando keep it close, but that also makes every offensive possession is going to matter more. And the Cavs are just going to be able to outpace them here on the offensive side. I think that there's been a lot of movement towards Orlando, but that to me feels very narrative-y. It's like, ooh, the Cavs are in trouble, and ooh, the vibes are bad. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Like, the Magic can't score. Like, at some point, like, the vibes aren't going to put the ball in the bucket, and that's a problem. How about this one? The Magic have a average age younger than 25. Look this up. Teams younger than 25 are 2-6 in the last 10 years in the first round overall, just 3-5 in game 1 straight up. And we know that traditionally, if the team covers, or if the team wins as a favorite, they cover. If they cover as a dog, they win outright. So you want to be able to play against that. We call that the Matt Mitchell rule around here. And I think that's in play here with the Cavs, this being less than 2 possessions. Key advantage here is going to be the math problem. Teams that make more threes in round 1 in their games win 81% of the time. I know this is not brilliant analysis. Hey, the team that made more shots won the game. But the big key here is that Orlando is so low in 3-point volume, and the Cavs are so much higher with so many more shooters. They're going to be trading threes while the Magic are desperately trying to get twos. The Orlando offensive floor is very, very low, and that's going to be able to get the Cavs here enough clearance for them to cover this number. I'll take the Cavs minus 4.5.
Okay, so we're leaning Cavs in game 1 and also the first half under. And for what it's worth, I too am moving in a little bit of a slow pace. Okay, we got a Saturday matinee, early game. It's fine, all good. But the next game on the schedule is the Suns, slight underdogs at Minnesota. That one tips at 3:30 Eastern. Dare I say, Raybon, another under?
Oh, yeah. And I don't know, there might be a few reasons why people are moving at a slow pace today, but I'm going with Phoenix, Minnesota, the first half under. This one's at 110, and I like the under. Now, this one is a little bit more of a kind of a contrarian play, but in the 2 games Karl Anthony Towns played against Phoenix this year, the pace was also 91.5 and 91.4 in those 2 games. So very low pace, and that's not surprising when you consider that the T-Wolves are a defensive team that's starting to 7-footers. So in a playoff like atmosphere like this, I do think you're going to continue to see that kind of pace again. We know Minnesota is the top defense overall and top 3 in first half points allowed on defense at home as well. But I do think that this Phoenix team, because they're going to regress. They averaged over 66 points in the first half in the 3 meetings against Minnesota. But Minnesota's got they're too good on defense. You got the week of prep to make adjustments. Phoenix shooting an unsustainable 56% from 3 in the first half of those 3 games against Minnesota, 24-43. Don't think that's going to continue. I don't think they're going to have another 44-point first quarter. And Phoenix, we know they rely on tough mid-range shots. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Phoenix's offense could cool off a bit. And then on the other side, Minnesota, their offense tends to struggle early in games. We've seen that a ton, especially down the stretch. So I think with this week, off to prepare, I think you're going to see a more deliberate attack from Minnesota. I think you're going to see them, work to get good possessions. And we know Phoenix is going to blitz Anthony Edwards. They're going to double him, sometimes triple him, force him to give it up. And I think it's going to take time to kind of move the ball around, get it to the right guy, and just run get higher quality possessions, because Minnesota averaging under 50 first half points a game against Phoenix this year, averaging 12.3 turnovers in the first half against Phoenix. That's more than some teams average over a full game. And Anthony Edwards, he's shooting just 40% with 9 turnovers and only 7 assists in the first half against Phoenix. So I do think Minnesota is going to be a little bit out of rhythm, but I also think they're going to be a little bit more deliberate on offense, even if the efficiency isn't there. So this is another one where the public's on the over, but I love the under in the first half.
I mean, hard to argue with those numbers. Now, Matt, you have a side in this game as well.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to say I love Chris's cap here. That's a phenomenal cap, especially with the first half problems for Minnesota. Like, they just have started slow the entire year. We made the analogy that basically they let you get a head start before they try and run you down. And that's kind of how they play all year. And so the first half under, I think, is a really smart play there. I'll take Wolves minus 1.5, though you may be able to get a better line in game on this. That's important to note here is that, if you take Wolves and they go down early, do not freak out, because that's just how this team plays. They are a second half team, while the Suns are categorically the worst second half team in the league and the worst fourth quarter team in the league. That's kind of a problem in trying to win games that are close at the end, as this line kind of suggests. The big thing for me is adjustments. Look, the baseline for how the Wolves play throughout the regular season and the baseline for how the Suns play in the regular season resulted in the Suns going 3-0, and everyone's like, it's such a bad matchup. How can the Wolves possibly beat this team? Well, the key is that you don't play like you did in the times in which you lost. And if you've got a coach like Doc Rivers or Mike Budenholzer or one of these coaches that's stubborn and wants to stick with their principles and not get away from it, then you can get in real trouble and the series can get away from you quickly. Chris Finch isn't like that. He's showcased in 2 series that he's willing to make pretty drastic adjustments in order to find them. And he talked about this week. Most media scrums, it's going to be a hard-fought battle, and it's going to be about will. And okay, throw all that out. But if you really listen and pay attention, you can find small details. And one thing that Towns and Finch talked about was we need to use our versatility, and we need to find different answers. That's so important here. Because if they switch things up, if they play Nickeil Alexander-Walker next to Jaden McDaniels, so they've got 2 wing defenders on the floor with 1 big, that gives them a much better chance of hanging with the Suns and being able to slow down their jump shooting. They can play different coverages. They can spread the floor with Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, which is going to bring Jusuf Nurkic out of the paint. That's going to make it a lot easier for driving lanes for Anthony Edwards. There's all these options that they have on the table. None of the good options are what they normally do. So they're going to have to get out of their comfort zone, but I do think this team is built better than I think the market is expecting for them to be able to do that. Finally, we got Frank Vogel. Vogel's a great coach, but only when he's really as a huge dog does he cover in these type of spots. He's 4-7 in game ones when he's not more than a 3-point dog. If he was a big dog in this spot, I'd probably be on the Suns, given the matchup and everything else, as well as Vogel. This is a great coaching matchup, but he's not as good when the market is leaning in his direction. And it's definitely leaning in his direction given the seedings differential and the fact that the Wolves have home court here. So I'll lay the 1.5 with the Minnesota Timberwolves here.
Okay, I have some follow-ups. So I guess, the head-to-head between these two teams during the season is what it is, and maybe that's why Phoenix is favored in this series, but I was still a little surprised to see that. Raybon, you actually are leaning Phoenix, though, both in this game and the series. So give me your reasoning for that.
Yeah, Maria. So I think, Matt made a great point about how at some point Minnesota is going to make it, adjustments, and they're going to get the upper hand. Phoenix is going to, regress and stop getting as lucky shooting the ball. So I do lean Phoenix for the series because I still think, even if that happens in this game, I still think Phoenix does have some key matchup advantages. The biggest one being that Minnesota is still a too big team. Like, if you're taking Gobert or Towns off the floor to play, Alexander Walker next to Jaden McDaniels, like, that's still a big drop off in terms of who, like, the quality of players you have on the floor. So I think that's the issue for me, where you can't hide Karl Anthony Towns. Like, he's going to have to guard a perimeter player when he's on the floor with Gobert. And that's not even speaking to, we've seen Gobert, and because of the way he plays, get taken advantage of in postseasons past as well. So I still have questions about how this too big lineup, which is gonna play for Minnesota, how that's gonna work over the course of a series when you're playing against, two of the best offensive players in the game. In KD and Booker, who, even if Minnesota, wins these first two games at home, I still think those veteran guys can kind of figure things out. And that the Minnesota matchup problems also, I think, kind of is an equalizer, because I think Minnesota, you would consider them the deeper team. But in this kind of situation, I think that's kind of the equalizer. I don't think Phoenix, they can play a short rotation and not really be hurt as much. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, to Matt's point, Chris Finch has some work cut out for him, and I'm curious to see how those adjustments play out in game one. It's going to be very telling for the series. Okay, we still have two more games today, so let me keep this going. This evening, polish the marquee: Sixers, Knicks, Madison Square Garden. Knicks laying 3.5. Raybon, I'll start with you once more. What's your pick for this one?
I'm taking the dog. I'm taking Philly here. I'm a Knicks fan, but I can't get around Philly being a value in this spot, especially at more than one possession. Listen, they were on a 66 win pace with Joel Embiid, a 31 win pace without him. So you can say what you want about him. He's banged up. He's looking gimpy, this and that. But the bottom line is, when he's been on the floor, even at less than 100%, because he's hardly ever 100%. This team has been extremely hard to beat. They're averaging about 121 points per game with him on the floor. They're shooting, about 4% higher on threes and field goal attempts. They're shooting about 8 more free throws per game with Embiid on the floor. And even though, he didn't look great against Miami, right? But the prior 3 games to that, he averaged 33, 12, and 5 in just 30 minutes a game. So he doesn't have to be 100% to make a difference here. And he's not a guarantee to look bad again. He's played once since April 12th. He hasn't played since Wednesday. So I think a lot of people are kind of getting caught up in how he looked on Wednesday, which, how many times have we seen this before in the playoffs where a guy's questionable or a guy's, rumored to be hurt, and then like 5 minutes into the game, the announcer is like, oh man, he looks like a totally different player than he did the last time. So I'm not really buying it. And let's remember that Jalen Brunson played, 70 some odd games, and Embiid played 39, yet Philadelphia only finished with 3 fewer wins than these New York Knicks. I think Brunson will get his, but Embiid, he's going to get his as well. And the Knicks are going to miss Randall in this spot, 24, 9, and 5. Without him, they have a lot of role players playing well, but nobody who can really dribble outside of Brunson. So the Knicks are kind of fragile as well. And Philly does still have a legit second star in Tyrese Maxey, who's averaging 26 and 6. He's faster than anybody else on the court. And I also, Maria and Matt, I don't think you can underestimate Nick Nurse, because we have this perception of Philly with Embiid as maybe these kind of chokers. But remember, that was Rhett Brown and that was Doc Rivers. Nick Nurse, when he had a player the caliber of Embiid last with Kawhi Leonard, he won a championship as an underdog. So I'm not counting out Philly here. I think they're a value here, and I do think they're going to be able to flip home court. So give me the Sixers plus 3.5. I think the line's moving to the Knicks because they're getting the majority of the bets and money, but we have tracked a dozen sharp moves on the Sixers, and I do agree.
Preach on, preacher! Yes, thank you, Chris Raybon. Totally agree. Everything is on point here. I don't even need to add on to that. He hit most of my cap here. Yeah. Nick Nurse, huge advantage. Lots of things here to take advantage of it. By the way, if you're taking the dog here, if you're taking the Sixers plus the points, take him to win game one. Dogs who cover game one win 69% of the time, 66% of round one game ones since 2013. The Knicks are going to overload on Maxey and Embiid, which is going to open things up for them. Much of the cap is going to be about people being like, well, I don't think Embiid's going to be, he did not look good in that Sixers game or in that play-in game. He didn't look good. And you have to ask yourself this question. Does it matter how Embiid plays, or does it matter how the team plays around Embiid? And that's like a really important distinction here, because the Sixers have played great around Embiid if he's been on the floor, regardless of how he's played. Will it help if he goes for 30? Yes. Is it likely he can go for 30 by drawing, 20, 25, 100 free throws in this game? Yes, but he doesn't need to. So Raybon nailed it. Sixers is definitely the sharp line here. That's the way that I think you should be playing this. Oh, also, I need the Sixers to win because we have too many expletive Knicks fans at Action Network, and I need them to all just calm down a little bit. Little too wild this last week with Knicks fever.
Okay, so I'm just going to say I don't fall into that category, and Matt, call me a coward if you want. I can get on board with Sixers plus the points. I am so on board with that. I'm struggling with the money line. I see what you're saying about like the teams that cover, tend to also win the game and all that. To me, I think the Knicks learned a lesson last postseason against the Heat. They know how important it is to win game one. They are rested. I think it's going to be a dogfight, but I feel like they just need this one. And I'm not saying I'm going to bet them. I'm not betting them on a side. I would take the Sixers plus the points. That's all I'll say about that. We're still, having one more game to talk about here. The finale, primetime, ABC, Nuggets, Lakers, playoff rematch from last season. Denver laying 6.5 or so. Raybon, who do you like?
I like Denver in this spot. I would actually love if this line got down to 6, but I'll talk about why in a second. But why do I like Denver here? I still think the Lakers, yes, they've been better down the stretch this season, but they still haven't beat Denver, in the last 8 tries. And I still think Jamal Murray presents a big matchup issue for the Lakers, because who are you going to put on him? D'Angelo Russell, he's been playing well offensively, but you can't put him on him. Austin Reeves, that just creates other problems elsewhere on the court. And, if LeBron's got to do, yes, he's rested, but that's a big ask for him. So I think Murray is still the X factor here. I still think he can play like, the second best player in this series for stretches. And his last 7 games, dating back to that playoff sweep, 30 points per game on 52% shooting, 43% from 3, and adding 7 assists against these Lakers. And then Jokic, he's averaging a 27-point triple-double on 53% from the field and 42% from deep. So I still think Denver is, they're still the defending champs. I know they got some guys at the bottom of the rotation that are a little bit different, but I still think Russell's going to struggle here, even though he's been key for the Lakers. And that's going to hurt because the Lakers are not really a deep team. And his last 9 against Denver, just 10.4 points per game, 4.9 assists for Russell, and a cumulative minus 44. So I think he's going to be an issue. Even if he's, and on defense too, even if he's guarding KCP, KCP could, backdoor cut, screens a lot, just not a good matchup for him. Anthony Davis, in the last 10 games against the Denver Nuggets for Anthony Davis, he has a cumulative minus 86. That is just unacceptable for a player of his stature. I think he's another guy that he might not give you what he normally does for the Lakers. And those two guys, they've been so important for the Lakers turnaround this season that I just don't know if the Lakers are going to be able to keep it that close if they're not playing a lot better than they have in the past. And also the Lakers 28-14 at home, just 19-21 on the road. Denver, 24 of their 33 home wins came by 8 or more points, and another 6 came by exactly 6 points. A very common score, especially for them. So that's why I said I would love if the line got down to 6. Feels like you're getting some push insurance. And that alt line, Denver minus 5.5, it's about minus 140, minus 145. I think that may be worth a look as well. But I do like Denver to come out and take care of business at home in game 1.
Matt.
So I'm the coward here because I want the Lakers. I want the Lakers. I'm probably going to bet them on the money line. I put a small bet on them for the series. But I'm going to go ahead and stay away from that. I'm going to take a tangential one, which is the under 226. Nuggets home unders since the start of last season are at 56%. And then 54% last playoff. They're 4-1 to the under versus the Lakers in that span at home. Big thing here is the officiating changes. So the lack of officiating that the Nuggets will get, they never get a really good whistle. And the Lakers continue to get a great whistle. They have the largest free throw differential in the league by about 1.5 miles versus every single team. In 2020, the Lakers played Dwight Howard and they basically roughed up Jokic. They tried to play super physical with him. They don't have the personnel to do that, but they do have now the officiating to be able to bring more help. Now, Joker's a better player than he was then. He's a substantially better player. He's won what will soon to be 3 MVPs since then, but he'll pass out of it. He's not going to force the issue. And if he's not going to force the issue and they're going to play that physical, it's going to drag things down. The other end, Lakers likely to get free throws. And that means that the Nuggets are taking the ball out of the basket and their offense will bog down sometimes in those situations. Another thing, last season, their starting lineup that the Lakers want to get to today, which is D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. When Rui, AD, and LeBron play, they've won about 67% of their games. They're going to try and get to that lineup as much as possible today. That lineup was actually plus 4.5 in net rating this season versus the Nuggets and only got to play in 2 of the matchups. But it's actually had some success versus this Nuggets team. Christian Brown can't play in this series. It's a nightmare series for him. Peyton Watson, Justin Holiday, maybe, but those are unproven guys, at least with this team. So all this to say, I think there's a little bit of an edge on the Lakers. And if I like the Lakers, I like the under here. And there's also a good chance that Denver's defense, which is way better than it was last year, top 10, that the Lakers just go cold. Can't hit threes. And if that happens, we're going to cruise on the under here. So I'm going to play it safe with the under 226 as a means of being cowardly about liking the Nuggets. Lakers to win this game outright.
Okay, guys, we're going to build a parlay now. Not just any parlay. I'm talking the Notorious SGP. We're going to keep it within this Lakers-Nuggets game. And for the first leg, basically, I'm just going to vote between the picks that you just laid out. And as I did on our debut show, I am once again voting on the side of Raybon. Sorry, Matt. Denver minus 6.5. And basically, I can see a path for the Lakers winning this game. Like I can see it. I just don't feel comfortable with it. And so look, Raybon laid it all out. I'm on board with it. I'm sold on it. So Denver minus 6.5. First leg of the SGP. Matt Moore, you're going to stick around with us. Raybon, we'll catch you later. Enjoy your 420.
Always a pleasure. You as well.
Check out some notable player props for the day. Joel Embiid's points prop at 29.5 is tied with Jalen Brunson for the highest. Embiid went under this in Wednesday's play-in. Nikola Jokic is at plus 125 to record a triple-double. He has 25 on the season. Devin Booker at plus 110 to make at least 3 triples. He was 3 of 8 from deep last Sunday against Minnesota. Time for picks and roll as we welcome Sean Little to the party. Sean, how we doing? I know we want to talk some props. What's your favorite for today?
My favorite prop of the day is going to be LeBron James over 41.5 PRA. Let's jump right into it. I know my guy Matt Moore is out in Denver, so this is going to be a hot topic. We'll get around to the series here in a second. But the biggest thing for LeBron James as he gets older is always going to be rest. That's why I thought that it was always nonsense that they would ever think about throwing, quote unquote, the play in, because they win, they get in, and then LeBron James gets rested. Now, he hasn't played in a back-to-back since February, and that was against the Wizards, so that doesn't even count, right? Like, the close of the month of February, his last back-to-back was against the Wizards, so essentially it wasn't a back-to-back. LeBron hasn't played 2 games in a row, or LeBron James only played 2 games since 4-9. So he is completely rested. That's almost a full 11 days with only 2 games in between. So when we talk about this matchup, I go back to last year, and the best shot, if I can remember it as vividly as I remember anything, LeBron James walking through the tunnel after game 1 versus Denver last year, and he had this like extremely disappointed look on his face because he knew how close they were to stealing game 1, and he knew how close he was to flipping the entire series on its head. I believe you get LeBron James' best shot in this game. Last year's game 1, he had 26, 9 assists, 12 rebounds. I see something similar in this ball game coming up in game 1. He's going to come in, try to steal game 1, and then put a lot of pressure on the Denver Nuggets. We know, hey, Matt, they're calling it the most competitive sweep of all time. So that's worth something when you start putting this stuff together. But all jokes aside, I believe LeBron James shows up in this game 1, rested and ready to go. He impacts the game big time.
Sean, I think when you were describing LeBron, like last season, exasperated was the word.
Yeah.
That's just how he was, like knowing they were so close. And you may have heard, we are building a parlay for this game, not just any parlay, but the Notorious SGP. So we are going to use this as a leg. Matt, this gets a little interesting here because not only did you like the under 226, Raybon liked the Nuggets to cover in this matchup. How do you think Nuggets -7 could fit with this leg that Sean has given us?
I like it in both instances, honestly. If you like the Nuggets, you're probably thinking this is more of an offensive-centric game. And if it's more of an offensive-centric game, that means more opportunities for LeBron to be able to dish, get assists, and he'll be focused in on, probably a faster pace, more rebounds as well, and the scoring possibilities. Like, if this game goes over, I think that leans towards Nuggets. And if it leans towards Nuggets, then LeBron can still put a huge number up. On the counter side, the under may seem confusing here because it's like, well, wait, if he's going to put up a bunch of points and assists, how is the game going to go under? And the answer is that basically a lot of my cap leans towards the Lakers winning this game, which I think is very much actually on the table. And in that case, probably happens if LeBron has a monster game. But even if this is a Nuggets win and an under, LeBron can take up a huge swath of that, and still the under cashes based off of the other Lakers not performing. And then we're still able to get this into a spot where this goes under, but the Nuggets have like a nice cumulative effort to get enough. The Nuggets defense is good enough, but LeBron puts up these big numbers. And I'll just say this, these counter directional plays where you've got LeBron with an over, but an under, you're not going to get the kind of hold restrictions on your same game parlay that you will if they're correlated. If it's like LeBron is going to score all the points and the game's going over, then you're going to pay a little bit of a hold tax on that. So this gets you a better way to go counter directional, be a little bit more strategic. There's definitely an opportunity here for the under to cash as well as his over, but especially if you like Nuggets, I think LeBron is going to put up these numbers, and that gets you, again, some counter directional action.
I feel like this has in a way been like the story of LeBron James's career too, right? We've seen so many instances where he's come out and played like this superhero, but like the team falls short, right? Like this is like, I'm seeing Cavs Warriors like all over again. So I think this is really interesting. And also, if you do like the Lakers, I mean, this is going to be their best shot to win tonight because of the rest factor, Sean, that you brought up. But I want to pivot to another series here, Philly, New York, because Sean, you cover the Knicks a lot, and I know you're super familiar with that team. feels to me the books really just don't know what to do with this series, right? You have like a player who is MVP level, but he's clearly not 100% healthy in Joel Embiid. How would you attack betting this series?
Yeah, the market knows what to do, but they don't want to back the New York Knicks. Everyone's been negative, I think, especially in the mainstream on the New York Knicks. They just can't believe a guy like Jalen Brunson and I guess essentially, quote unquote, a ragtag group of guys like he has with him outside of OG on the defensive end can actually make a push for the Eastern Conference Finals. But I really believe that Jalen Brunson can lead those guys and get it done. I'm going to take Knicks to win game one, win the series, plus 170. Listen to this number, Matt Moore. When the Knicks are either on 2, 3, or 4 days rest, games are 4-13 to the under by an average of 6.6 points. So they're not even coming close to going over. So you're telling me a team I just watched in the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid lumbering around, doing their thing, needed 20 from Batum, 6 threes, and they scored 105, and then they're going to go to the Garden and put up a big number or some competitive number on the Knicks? I just don't see it. That was against a hobbled Jimmy Butler. I'm very excited for the Knicks, arrested Knicks. They'll be on 5 full days of rest to play this Philadelphia 76ers team. I don't see how they score a bunch of points. The Knicks have bodies for Joel Embiid with Hardenstein, Mitch Robb, and Precious Achiuwa. I don't know how much Precious is a body, but 6 fouls is 6 fouls, Matt Moore.
Yeah.
So we're going to throw everything
Use
at
them
Joel
up.
Embiid, use them up. And then, of course, we have Maxey is the other big guy to slow up. And Dante, Josh Hart, Deuce McBride can give him a lot of energy. I think that's the big thing when we come down the stretch in some of these games, at least in this game one, they're going to be rested. They're going to be able to put forth a lot of effort to slowing down Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. If you can slow up those two guys, I don't see how the Philadelphia 76ers score. I believe in this game one at the Garden, it's going to be unbelievably rocking. The Knicks get the game, and then that leads them to get in the series. I'll take plus 170.
I like this Knicks team. We talked about on buckets.
Oh my God, I can hear the butt coming. Oh
About
my goodness.
betting.
The first word, Matt Moore, I can hear the butt coming already.
I like the Knicks. I've talked about betting them on the Eastern Conference all year on Buckets, our NBA podcast. We've talked a lot about him. I think Jalen Brunson's going to have an absolutely phenomenal playoff run for a few games here. But Knicks fans, 20 years of abject misery, humiliation, and disgrace. They have one good season where they luck into a 2 seed, and all of a sudden they're like, I just don't see any way the Sixers win. How could this possibly happen? Plus, there's a lot of conversation about, like, did you see how Embiid looked in that play-in game? Yeah, versus the Heat. You guys are a very good team. You're not Miami. You don't make teams miserable.
Defensively?
You're good. You're really good. You just don't have the Heat's voodoo. So to me, it's fine. Knicks fans are not going to see it coming. They never do.
Oh my.
Fine. Wow. It's okay. Be excited. You need to hold on to this energy, Sean. Cherish these moments before game one tips, because unfortunately we know that by the end of it, how the Knicks usually wind up in these situations.
Last 2 times the Philadelphia 76ers have played the New York Knicks, they scored 79 points in both games. I understand that's without Joel Embiid, but 79 points is 79 points.
That's playing their game.
79? That's complete lockup city. They are going to come into this game rested, focused, and Joel Embiid didn't move well. Matt, believe your eyes. You saw it just like everybody else. Joel, a last point here, Maria.
Go ahead.
A big part of this series is going to depend on the whistle and how they call it against Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid is going to be able to get to the line with a lot of ticky-tack, easy way that he's been getting to the line his entire career, especially earlier this NBA season, then it becomes completely different. I mean, start making part of your cap that the referee assignment, all that stuff really helps you when you start looking into some of these series.
I think that's a fantastic point, because I truly believe that the whistle and how the play-in game was officiated against Miami 100% played into Embiid's hands, and he was smart the way that he approached it, and he conserved. But the bottom line is, he definitely, like to your point, Sean, he looks slow, and the Knicks for once are rested. Like, they have finally had a chance to rest something that the Sixers haven't had as much of. So I do really like them in game one. And because of that, I could see them edging out in the series. And so I really like your pick, Sean, even though, we could have called this picks and eye roll because of Matt's, initial reaction. But Sean Little, thank you so much for stopping by.
Anytime. Thank you.
Well, let's flash back to January 5th, the only time this season the Knicks and Sixers played with Joel Embiid on the floor. Knicks won 128-92 behind 29 points from Jalen Brunson. Embiid scored 30, including 9 free throws. Tyrese Maxey had 27, but the Knicks bench outscored the Sixers bench 49-15. So as mentioned, it is 420. Let's go to Keech and Chong, shall we? Stephen Keech from Rotogrinders and Scores and Odds hanging out with us. I wanted to ask you about Embiid. This is a little bit of a tricky matchup, obviously. How might the Knicks handle it, and what player props are you eyeing as a result?
So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how they open up. I think it'll be kind of like a pretty standard thing at the beginning of the game, at least, where we'll see probably Hartenstein on Embiid. I would expect OG to get Tyrese, which is probably bad news for him. But the way that the Knicks defend Embiid, I think, has a huge impact on the Knicks rebounding totals. So assuming Hartenstein is on Embiid, I would assume we get more Josh Hart kind of like on the weak side. We know Josh Hart is a very good per minute rebounder. Would expect him to play like nearly the entire game, if not the entire game. So his rebounding prop at 10.5, I think there's some room up there. I think the alts make some sense. The other thing is the Knicks haven't really like fully unleashed Mitch Robinson yet. This could be a time where they do that. If he plays more, that obviously directly impacts Isaiah Hartenstein. I am interested in his under 8.5 rebounds for a few reasons. I think the potential for more Mitch is obviously a nice one. The potential for foul trouble is always kind of up in the air against Embiid. And Embiid's man tends to be like a little bit less impactful on the defensive glass, at least, just given that, Embiid himself commands so much attention. So if we get that Hartenstein matchup with Embiid, I'd be very interested in that under 8.5. I think you could potentially wait until tip-off and like kind of see how the Knicks open up defensively, and you can kind of have an idea of what they're going to do, at least to start, if you want to feel a little bit safer about it. But assuming the matchups are how I think they're going to be, I think the Hartenstein under 8.5 rebounds and the Josh Hart over 10.5 and up to 15 plus is interesting.
Yeah, I love all that analysis. The Hart play in particular, I think I'm going to be on for the over on his rebounds. He's a rebounding monster in general, and particularly in this situation, he's going to have to stay attached to Kelly Oubre. He's going to be battling underneath for offensive rebounds. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Hart to grab those boards and then push the ball up. They're going to want to get the ball up court quickly. So you're going to see, I think, a less boxing out and more grabbing of the rebounds. What I mean by that is you're not going to box out for the point guard in order to grab it. They're going to want to go ahead and get the ball up the floor because you do want to get ahead of the defense with Embiid being the big presence in the paint. So I like that as well. Embiid's also not going to attack the basket. So there's a good chance that Hartenstein and Mitch Robinson both are probably not going to be around the rim as much. They're going to be contesting those mid-range jumpers from Embiid where he's more comfortable. It takes less work for him and it's less of a toll on his body. So all of that to say, I really like those angles. I'm definitely going to be on the Hart over rebounds angle. That's a smart one there from Keech.
Well, Hart's been a rebounding machine and just like a stat sheet stuffer all season. And I can just envision, him grabbing those boards and just pushing the ball way up the floor, trying to beat the Sixers, especially since they're a little slower with Embiid. Now, Steven, you have another pick for us throughout the day today. What do you got?
So the other angle, it's an ugly one. You're accustomed to that if you follow me for any period of time. So Gabe Vincent, you might not even know he's on the Lakers if you haven't paid much attention. He hasn't played much this season. He's shooting 11% from three-point range, which is really bad. Obviously, a pretty small sample size. But this is kind of like the perfect spot for him, I think. I would expect that the Lakers will want to make a pretty concerted effort to try to slow down Jamal Murray. Could have some trouble doing that with D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, and if they're going to use Dinwiddie off the bench. So I think like Vincent just fits in this matchup really well. I don't think he needs much playing time to exceed his props of 2.5 points. I think 4.5 is the points and assists and 5.5 points, assists, and rebounds. There doesn't need much playing time there. He's not like not a volume scorer, so you're going to need him to probably be efficient with his looks. But I do think there's a very real chance he plays 20 minutes, potentially more. If Russell struggles, I don't think Russell gets played off the floor quite like he did in the last series between these teams last year. But even with that, in that playing game, Vincent was still able to see minutes in the high teens, even with Russell playing a pretty high allotment of minutes. So yeah, very interesting, Gabe Vincent. Curious to see kind of how things trend with his props over the course of the series.
Well, I'm glad you went to this Lakers-Nuggets matchup because this is the game that we are using to build a same game parlay. We're calling it the Notorious SGP. We already have 2 legs down. So Steven, it's up to you to give us one more leg.
So this one's juicy. I feel pretty good about it getting home. But the one thing the Nuggets do pretty well, they do a lot of things well. But one of the things they do very well is defend the three-point shot, particularly catch and shoot threes. They allow the second fewest three-point attempts per game on the season, the third fewest catch and shoot attempts. That's pretty much all of what Taurean Prince does in terms of his shot attempts. So under 1.5 3-point makes for Taurean Prince, that'll be my leg. I just don't think he'll have the volume there. I think if he goes over this, it's probably because he shoots the ball very efficiently.
Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up. We got our 3 legs for the Notorious SGP, and I'm going to recap those in just a second, but want to just say, Steven, thanks for stopping by. Matt Moore, you the best. Enjoy the games today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as we look at the Notorious SGP that we've built throughout the show, this is what we came up with. Denver -6.5 got my vote. That was recommended by Chris Raybon. Still expecting a big night from LeBron James, though. Him to go over 41.5 points, rebounds, and assists per Sean Little. And last but not least, Taurean Prince under 1.5 3-point makes via Stephen Keech. And you can find odds of about +450 on Bet365 right now. That leaves me for just enough time for one more shot at the buzzer. And I gotta say, I'm just sad. I'm just a little sad going into today, which is unfortunate because this is playoffs and this is the most exciting time of the year, but I just can't help but look at 2 playoff series being far less interesting because of injuries, and particularly ones that occurred in the play-in tournament. I mean, play-in, it's exciting, and I understand the importance of making the regular season matter more, but there is wear and tear, extra wear and tear happening on players' bodies in some instances. I, for one, find it cruel, just absolutely cruel. We get Boston and Miami in the first round. It's what everyone wanted to see, but no Jimmy Butler. I mean, talk about a break for Boston. And then real bummer, Zion Williamson playing the game of his life and hurt minutes before what would have been his first playoff appearance. Look, say what you want, old playoff format, these 2 teams would have already been in and resting. And I just find it interesting, the NBA wants player availability and they will penalize you for rest. But when will it is what it is stop being good enough when it comes to the league's grueling schedule? And that goes for both sides, the ownership and the players. I just feel like there's still work to be done when it comes to protecting player health. And that's a wrap on Nothing But Bet for our entire NBA crew. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the games today. We'll see you next time.